Used to believe love could survive anything. For 6 years, Sophia and I built our future together, one sacrifice at a time. I worked overtime without complaining because every extra paycheck helped her startup move one step closer to success. While my coworkers spent weekends relaxing, I spent mine helping Sophia prepare investor presentations, fixing software bugs, and listening whenever she felt overwhelmed. One evening, Daniel looked at me across our office break room and frowned. "You look exhausted," he said. "I'll rest after this project," I replied. "You've been saying that for months." "I have to. Sophia needs me." He sighed and folded his arms. "Just promise me one thing." "What?" "Don't lose yourself while trying to build someone else's dream." I smiled because I thought he was worrying for nothing. "I won't." Looking back now, I realized I'd already started disappearing without even noticing it. A few days later, Sophia called me while I was driving home from work. "Ethan," she said excitedly, "I think this is finally happening." "What happened?" "We're meeting a major investor tomorrow." I couldn't stop smiling. I knew they would see your talent. "I couldn't have reached this point without you." "You don't have to thank me." "Yes, I do." Her voice sounded warm, just like it always had. "You've believed in me since the beginning, because I know what you're capable of." She laughed softly. "When all this is over, we'll finally have time for ourselves." "I've been waiting for that." "So have I." For a moment, everything felt perfect again. Then she added, "Can we have dinner tomorrow night? There's something important I need to tell you." "Of course. I'll make a reservation at our favorite place." "I'll be there." I ended the call, smiling, completely unaware that the conversation waiting for me would change my life forever. The next evening, I arrived at our favorite restaurant a few minutes early. Sophia was already sitting by the window, quietly staring outside. When she saw me, she smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Sorry I'm late," I said as I took my seat. "You aren't," she replied softly. "You look tired. It's been a long week." I reached across the table. "I heard the investor meeting went well." She nodded. "It did." "That's amazing. I'm proud of you." "Thank you." Instead of celebrating, she stayed silent. She kept looking down at her hands as if she were searching for the right words. Finally, she took a slow breath. "Ethan, today we received a major investment offer." I grinned. "That's incredible. We should celebrate." She didn't smile back. "I've been thinking about my future." I laughed lightly. "Our future, you mean?" She slowly shook her head. "No, my future." The moment those words left her mouth, I felt something inside me quietly begin to break. I stared at her, hoping I had misunderstood. "What do you mean?" I asked. She took another deep breath. "This opportunity changes everything." "It changes our lives," I said with a hopeful smile. She slowly shook her head. "No, Ethan, it changes mine." My heart suddenly felt heavy. "Sophia, talk to me. I've been thinking for weeks." "About what?" "I don't think I can be in a relationship anymore." I blinked in disbelief. "What?" "I need to focus on my company. We've handled busy times before. This is different. We'll figure it out together." "I can't." "You don't have to do this alone." "Edo." The words sounded cold, almost rehearsed. I swallowed hard. "Are you breaking up with me?" She lowered her eyes. "Yes." For a few seconds, I couldn't hear the people around us. The restaurant was full, but everything became silent. Then she whispered, "Please, wait for me." I looked at her, completely confused. "Wait for what?" She looked into my eyes, and her voice trembled. "When I become successful, we'll have our chance." I felt my chest tighten. "You want me to put my life on hold?" "Only for a while." "How long?" "I don't know." "1 year." She stayed silent. 5 years. She looked away. I took a deep breath and asked the only question that mattered. "Do you still love me?" She opened her mouth, but no words came out. That silence shattered everything I believed. I slowly stood up and placed enough money on the table to pay for dinner. "I truly hoped we were building one future together," I said quietly. "Ethan, please don't leave." I forced a weak smile. "I hope you achieve every dream you've ever chased." Without looking back, I walked away. A week later, I watched her celebrate her company's first major funding round on a live stream. Investors applauded, cameras flashed, and she thanked everyone who helped her succeed. My name was never mentioned. That was the moment I realized I had already become part of her past. Barely recognized myself after that night. I still went to work every morning, but I felt empty inside. Every coffee shop reminded me of Sophia. Every song reminded me of promises that no longer existed. I stopped answering calls and ignored almost everyone. One evening, Daniel knocked on my apartment door. "You look terrible," he said. "I've been better." "No, you haven't. I'm Fina." He laughed. "You're the worst liar I've ever met." I looked away. I gave her everything. "I know. So why wasn't I enough?" He sat beside me. "Ethan, loving someone doesn't mean losing yourself. I don't know how to move on." "Then don't think about moving on today." "What should I do?" "Just survive today. We'll worry about tomorrow when it comes." His words didn't erase my pain, but for the first time since the breakup, I felt like I wasn't carrying it completely alone. The next afternoon, Emma came to visit me with 2 cups of coffee. "You still look miserable," she said. "I've had better weeks." She handed me a cup and sat across from me. "Can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "If someone truly loves you, would they ask you to stop living your own life?" I stayed quiet. "Ethan, I don't know anymore." "Ido." She looked straight into my eyes. "Real love doesn't put your future on hold." I lowered my head. I kept thinking she would call. And if she does, I'd probably answer. Emma sighed. "That's exactly why you need to heal." I don't know where to begin. Begin with yourself. Before leaving, she smiled gently. "You spent 6 years helping someone build her dream." She paused at the door. "Now it's time to build your own." For the first time, her words stayed in my mind long after the door quietly closed behind her. 2 days later, Daniel called me during lunch. "Ethan, are you busy?" "Not really." "Good. I already sent your resume to someone." I frowned. "You did what?" "Don't thank me yet." "I wasn't planning to." He laughed. "There's an interview tomorrow morning." "I don't want another job." "This isn't just another job." "I'm not ready." "You're more ready than you think." I stayed silent. "Ethan, are you going to spend the rest of your life waiting for someone who asked you to wait without a promise?" His question hit me hard. "No." "Then prove it." I took a slow breath. "Who is the interview with?" "Hayes Capital." "I've heard of them." "They're looking for someone who understands both technology and business." "I've never worked in finance." "You understand people, problems, and solutions." "That's enough." After ending the call, I looked at the interview invitation on my phone. For the first time since the breakup, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. The next morning, I stood outside the Hayes Capital building, staring at the glass doors. "You can still walk away," I whispered to myself. Instead, I stepped inside. A receptionist smiled. "Good morning. You must be Ethan Carter." "That's me. Please have a seat. Ms. Victoria Hayes will see you shortly." A few minutes later, a confident woman entered the lobby. "Mr. Carter?" I stood. "Yes." She offered her hand. "I'm Victoria Hayes. It's nice to meet you. Come with me." Inside her office, she glanced at my resume before looking directly at me. "You've done impressive work." "Thank you. But resumes don't tell me who people really are." She leaned forward. "So tell me, Ethan, if I gave you one impossible problem to solve, where would you begin?" I smiled for the first time in weeks. "I begin by asking why everyone else believes it's impossible." Victoria smiled back. For the first time, I saw genuine interest in someone's eyes instead of sympathy. Victoria folded her hands and smiled. "I like that answer." "Really? Most people tell me how they would solve a problem." I nodded. "You wanted to understand the problem first." "I've learned that the wrong question creates the wrong solution." She closed my resume. "Ethan, your experience is impressive." "Thank you. But your way of thinking impressed me even more." I wasn't sure what to say. She stood and walked toward the window. "I'd like to offer you a position in Hayes Capital's technology division." "You're serious?" "I don't make jokes during interviews." I laughed for the first time in weeks. "I'd be honored." "Good. Welcome to Hayes Capital." A few months later, Sophia's startup appeared in business headlines almost every week. Her success reminded me of everything I had lost, but I stopped chasing the past. Instead, I opened my contacts, stared at Sophia's number 1 last time, took a deep breath, and pressed delete. For the first time, I chose my future instead of my memories. My first week at Hayes Capital felt completely different from every job I had ever worked. Nobody treated me like I was just another programmer. Every meeting challenged the way I thought, and every conversation forced me to grow. On my third day, Victoria walked in my office. "Busy already?" she asked. "I'm trying to understand how everything fits together." She smiled. "Good. I thought you hired me to build software." "I did. Then why am I sitting in business meetings?" "Because software doesn't create companies." I looked at her. "It doesn't. It solves problems." She pointed toward the conference room. "Companies grow because people solve the right problems." I nodded slowly. "So you're teaching me business. I'm teaching you how leaders think." I followed her into the meeting, realizing I wasn't there simply to write code anymore. For the first time, someone expected me to become far more than the person I had been yesterday. A few weeks later, Victoria invited me into another meeting. "There's someone I want you to meet," she said. When I entered the office, an older man stood by the window with a calm smile. "Ethan," Victoria said, "this is Richard Hayes." I shook his hand. "It's an honor to meet you, sir." "The honor comes later," Richard replied with a chuckle. "First, I want to know how you think." I smiled nervously. "I'll do my best." He pulled out a chair. "Tell me something." "Of course. If you had $1 million, would you spend it or invest it?" "I'd invest it." "Why?" "Because money should create opportunities, not just comfort." Richard nodded with approval. "Good answer." "Victoria Smaiz. I told you he'd surprise you." Richard looked at me again. "From today forward, I want you to attend my acquisition meetings." I blinked. "Me? Yes. I still have so much to learn." He smiled. "That's exactly why you're the right person." Months turned into years, and every meeting taught me something new. I stopped thinking like an engineer and started thinking like a leader. Instead of asking how to build products, I learned to ask why people bought companies. One afternoon, Richard looked across the conference table. "Ethan, what do you see?" I studied the presentation. "A company with falling profits." He smiled. "What else?" "A loyal customer base." "Keep going." "A weak management team." He nodded. "And an opportunity." Richard leaned back and laughed. "Exactly." Victoria looked at me proudly. "That's not the answer you would have given 2 years ago." "No," I admitted. "Back then, I only saw numbers. And now I see people, decisions, and possibilities." After the meeting, Victoria stopped beside me. "You've changed. I've had great teachers." She smiled. "No, Ethan." She shook her head. "You finally started believing in yourself." For the first time, I realized she was right. One morning, I picked up a business magazine from the reception desk while waiting for a meeting. The cover stopped me in my tracks. Sophia. She stood in front of her company logo with a confident smile. Victoria noticed my expression. "You know her?" "I used to. You want to talk about it?" I shook my head. "No." She didn't ask another question. During lunch, I looked at the article again. Her company was expanding into new markets. Investors called her one of the fastest rising founders in the industry. For a moment, old memories returned. I quietly folded the magazine and put it away. That evening, Daniel called. "I saw Sophia on the news." "So did I." "Does it still hurt?" I took a deep breath. "A little." "Are you going to call her?" "No." "Why not?" "Because the man who needed her approval doesn't exist anymore." Daniel laughed softly. "I've been waiting to hear you say that." I smiled. "So have I." A few months later, Victoria called me into her office. "Close the door, Ethan." I sat across from her. "Is something wrong?" She smiled. "Actually, something is very right." She placed a folder on the desk. "I've been watching your work. I've only done my job. You've done much more than that." I opened the folder and stared at the documents. "What is this?" "Your new compensation package." I looked up. "I don't understand." "Victoria Smaiz, you've helped us make decisions that created enormous value. I was just part of the team. You became one of our leaders." She pointed to the last page. "We're giving you company shares." I froze. "You're serious?" "Completely." I struggled to find the right words. "I never imagined this." She stood and offered her hand. "You earned it." As I signed the papers, I had no idea Sophia's company was already beginning to crack from dangerous decisions made behind the scenes. All I knew was that for the first time in my life, I wasn't just successful. I was wealthy. Several years had passed since I joined Hayes Capital, and my work had become part of who I was. Every week, I reviewed reports, studied markets, and searched for companies with strong potential but hidden problems. The work was demanding, yet I enjoyed every challenge because it reminded me how far I had come. One Monday morning, Victoria walked into the conference room carrying a stack of files. "Good morning, everyone." "Good morning," we answered. She looked at me. "Ethan, today's meeting is important. I've reviewed the reports." "Good." Richard smiled from the other side of the table. "We're expanding our acquisition strategy." I nodded. "What industries are we targeting?" "Technology." I opened my notebook. "I'm ready." Victoria pressed the remote, and charts filled the large screen. "We're looking for companies growing too fast." Richard added quietly, "Rapid growth often hides dangerous mistakes." I listened carefully, unaware that one familiar name was about to change everything once again. Victoria changed to the next slide, and another company appeared on the screen. We discussed its strengths, weaknesses, and future. Then she clicked again. My heart stopped. Sophia's company logo filled the screen. For a moment, I couldn't hear anyone speaking. Richard pointed at the financial report. "Revenue has doubled in 2 years." Another executive nodded. "But expenses are rising even faster." Someone else added, "Investors are demanding impossible growth." I stared at the numbers, but all I could see were memories. I remembered the nights we stayed awake building presentations. I remembered believing her dream was our future. Victoria looked at me. "Ethan," I blinked. "Saw the... You know this company?" I took a careful breath. "I know its founder." The room became quiet. Richard folded his hands. "Can you separate your personal history from your professional judgment?" I looked back at the screen. "Yes." My voice sounded calm. Inside, old wounds quietly opened again. Victoria continued the presentation. "Ethan, walk us through the financial risks." I stood and looked at the screen. "The company's revenue is impressive," I began, "but the growth isn't sustainable." Richard nodded. "Explain." "They're expanding into too many markets at once." Another executive asked, "What happens if growth slows?" "They'll struggle to satisfy investors." Victoria changed to another chart. "What do you notice here?" I studied the numbers carefully. "Operating costs are increasing faster than expected." "Anything else?" I pointed at the report. "These expenses don't fully match the company's public statements." The room fell silent. Richard leaned forward. "So, someone may be hiding the real financial picture?" "It's possible." Victoria looked at me. "Would you recommend a deeper investigation?" "Yes." I paused for a moment. "If these reports are accurate, the problem isn't weak products." "What is it then?" Richard asked. I met his eyes. "Leadership decisions." None of us knew that, behind those numbers, dangerous choices were already pushing the company toward collapse. After the meeting ended, Victoria asked me to stay behind. "Ethan, close the door." I did. She placed a thin folder on the table. "These reports arrived this morning." I opened it and scanned the pages. "Cash flow is getting worse." She nodded. "There are also rumors." "What kind of rumors?" "One executive may be hiding financial losses." I frowned. "Do we know who?" "Mason Reed." I remembered seeing his name in several reports. "He joined the company 2 years ago." "Yes." Victoria crossed her arms. "If these numbers are true, Sophia may not even know what's happening." I stayed quiet. Part of me wanted to warn her. Another part remembered the night she asked me to wait. Victoria watched my face. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking emotions can't change facts." She smiled slightly. "That's the answer I hoped to hear." I closed the folder. "So what's our next move?" She looked directly at me. "We keep investigating." I nodded, even though every page felt like another reminder of a life I had left behind. The following morning, I walked into Victoria's office carrying every report we had collected. "I finished the preliminary review," I said. She looked up, "And I believe the company is much weaker than it appears." Richard entered a moment later. "Explain your conclusion." I spread the documents across the table. "Revenue growth is real, but profits are shrinking." "What caused it?" Richard asked. "Aggressive expansion, hidden losses, and poor executive decisions." Victoria nodded slowly. Can a company recover? Only if someone uncovers the truth before investors lose confidence. The room became quiet. Richard looked at Victoria, then back at me. I've made my decision. I waited. Ethan, I want you to lead the acquisition investigation. I blinked. Me? You know the technology. Victoria Smaid. And you've proven you can separate emotion from judgment. I took a slow breath. I accept. As I left the office with the investigation file in my hands, I realized my next assignment wasn't just another business deal. It was a journey straight back into the past I thought I had already escaped. The morning of the negotiation meeting felt like every other business day until I saw the company name on the conference room schedule. My hand stayed steady, but my heartbeat quietly changed. I picked up my notebook, took a slow breath, and walked inside. Victoria looked at me. Ready? I am. Richard nodded. Let's keep this professional. Of course. The conference room door opened. Several executives entered first. Then Sophia walked in. The moment our eyes met, she stopped walking. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Ethan, she whispered. I stood politely. Good morning. She stared at me in disbelief. So, you work here? I nodded. Yes. She looked around the room, then back at me. I didn't expect this. I didn't expect it either. The silence between us felt strangely familiar, but this time I wasn't the man waiting for answers. I was the man sitting on the other side of the table. Sophia slowly took her seat, but her eyes never left me. I still can't believe this, she said quietly. It's been a long time. It has. She hesitated before asking, what exactly do you do here? I answered calmly. I help make acquisition decisions. Her eyebrows lifted. Acquisitions? Yes. She looked genuinely surprised. I thought you were still writing software. I started there. And now I evaluate companies, investments, and long-term strategy. She stared at me for another moment. You've changed. You've grown. She lowered her eyes. I'm glad to hear that. Before I could reply, Victoria entered the room. Good morning, everyone. The meeting immediately shifted into business. I opened my notebook without another word. Sophia glanced at me once more, as if she wanted to ask 100 questions. Instead, she stayed silent. For the first time since our breakup, our conversation wasn't about love. It was about business. The presentation began, and Sophia stood beside the screen with quiet confidence. Thank you for meeting with us, she said. Our company is looking for strategic investment to support our next stage of growth. Victoria nodded. We're listening. Sophia explained the expansion plans, new products, and future projections. I listened carefully, taking notes without showing any emotion. When she finished, Richard looked at me. Ethan, I understood the question immediately. What are your thoughts? I looked at the financial reports before answering. The product is strong. Sophia smiled slightly. But, I continued, the current financial risks cannot be ignored. Her smile disappeared. What risks? She asked. Rapid expansion, declining margins, and unstable cash flow. She frowned. Our team believes those issues are temporary. I hope they're temporary. She looked directly at me. You don't sound convinced. I closed the report. My responsibility is to evaluate facts, not hopes. The room fell silent, and I realized she was seeing a version of me she had never known before. After the meeting paused for a short break, Sophia quietly walked toward me. Ethan, can we talk for a minute? I nodded. We have a few minutes. She looked uncomfortable. I never imagined seeing you here. Neither did I. You seem different. I've had time to change. She gave a small, uncertain smile. I can see that. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she asked, Are you happy? I thought about the question. Yes, I'm glad. She looked down. I wanted to call you so many times, but you didn't. No. Why? I thought you were better off without hearing from me. I took a slow breath. That decision was yours to make. She nodded. I know. Before she could say anything else, someone called her name. Sophia, we're ready. She looked back at me. I hope this meeting goes well. I answered politely. I hope you find the outcome you're looking for. She walked away believing another investor might still save her company. She had no idea the real decision had already begun. The meeting resumed, and everyone returned to the conference table. Victoria reviewed the final reports while Richard quietly studied the financial summaries. I signed several internal documents and placed them neatly inside the acquisition folder. Sophia noticed my signature. She frowned. What is that? Victoria uncertificable. Internal review documents. Sophia looked at me. Why is Ethan signing them? I met her eyes. Because they're part of my responsibility. She reached for one page before stopping. At the top, she saw the words Hayes Capital Acquisition Evaluation. Her face turned pale. No. She looked back at me. This is an investment meeting, is it? I stayed silent for a moment. Then I answered honestly. No. Her voice shook. You're not here to fund my company. I slowly closed the folder. We're here to determine whether Hayes Capital should acquire it. She stared at my signature again as if it belonged to a stranger. In that moment, I realized life had completed a circle neither of us had ever imagined. Years ago, she asked me to wait until she became successful. Now I was sitting across from her as the executive helping decide whether my company would buy hers. The next negotiation meeting felt completely different from the first. The room was quieter, the smiles were gone, and every person carried a thick folder filled with difficult questions. I took my usual seat while Victoria and Richard reviewed the latest reports. Sophia looked tired. She forced a polite smile. Thank you for meeting with us again. Victoria Nadif. We have several concerns. I'm prepared to answer them. Richard opened the first report. Your projected growth no longer matches your financial statements. Sophia frowned. There must be a mistake. I spoke calmly. We verified the numbers twice. She looked at me. I wasn't aware of these discrepancies. Victoria asked gently, who prepared these reports? Mason did. Richard exchanged a quick glance with me. Then we need to hear his explanation. Sophia reached for her phone. I'll call him now. She stepped outside the room. As the door closed behind her, I felt no satisfaction. Years ago, I had begged someone to fight for us. Now, she was the one desperately trying to save something already beginning to fall apart. Sophia returned a few minutes later with a worried expression. I can't reach Mason, she said. Richard folded his hands. He knew about today's meeting, didn't he? Yes. Then where is he? I don't know. Victoria looked at me. Ethan, please continue. I opened another report. We found several contracts approved without full disclosure. Sophia leaned forward. That's impossible. I wish it were. She shook her head. Mason told me everything was under control. Richard asked quietly, did you personally review every agreement? She hesitated. I trusted him. The room became silent. I remembered saying those same words years ago. I trusted her. Now she was saying them about someone else. Victoria broke the silence. We're not accusing you of fraud. Then what are you saying? We believe someone close to you may have hidden the truth. Sophia slowly sat back. For the first time since the meeting began, I saw fear replace confidence in her eyes. She finally understood how dangerous blind trust could. The next morning, Michael Stone entered the conference room carrying another stack of documents. I finished the legal review, he said. Victoria looked up. What did you find? Michael placed the files on the table. Several financial records don't match the official reports. Richard frowned. How serious is it? Serious enough to trigger a formal investigation. Sophia looked stunned. That can't be true. Michael met her eyes. I wish I were wrong. I quietly turned another page. There are unauthorized transfers. Michael nodded. And missing disclosures. Sophia covered her face with her hands. Mason told me everything had been approved. Richard asked gently, did you sign these documents? Yes. Did you read every page? Her voice became almost a whisper. No. Nobody spoke for several seconds. The silence felt painfully familiar. Years ago, I trusted someone with my heart. Now she had trusted someone with her company. Both of us had paid the price for believing the wrong person without asking enough questions. That afternoon, James Porter released an investigative article online. Within minutes, my phone started vibrating nonstop. Victoria looked at the screen. The story is spreading fast. I opened the article. They're reporting hidden financial losses. Richard sighed. Investors will react immediately. Sophia's phone rang again. She answered quickly. Hello. I could hear the voice shouting through the speaker. What do you mean investors are pulling out? She closed her eyes. No, please don't make any decisions yet. She ended the call and looked at us. They're selling their shares. Another notification appeared on my phone. The company's stock price had dropped sharply. Sophia whispered, This can't be happening. Victoria spoke gently. The market has lost confidence. I watched Sophia struggle to stay calm. Part of me remembered the night she walked away from me without looking back. Another part only saw someone watching her world collapse. I expected to feel victorious. Instead, I felt unexpectedly sad. No amount of success could erase the memory of the person I had once loved. The following morning, everyone gathered for the final meeting. The atmosphere was heavy, and nobody expected good news. Sophia looked exhausted, but she still stood tall. She looked at me. Ethan, is there any way to save my company? I answered honestly, not in its current condition. She lowered her eyes. I trusted the wrong people. I stayed silent. After a long pause, she whispered, This is how you felt, wasn't it? I met her eyes. Yes. Tears filled her eyes, but she didn't look away. I'm sorry. Richard cleared his throat. We've reached our decision. Victoria opened the official folder. Hayes Capital will begin formal acquisition proceedings effective immediately. The room became completely silent. Sophia slowly closed her eyes. So, it's over. I looked at the signed documents in front of me. Part of me had once dreamed of revenge. Another part wished none of this had ever happened. As I signed the final authorization, I realized karma had spoken more powerfully than anger ever could. The acquisition had officially begun. A few days after the acquisition officially began, I received a short message from Sophia. Can we meet? Just once. Privately. I stared at the screen for several minutes. Victoria noticed my silence. Everything all right? I received a message. From Sophia? I nodded. What are you going to do? I don't know. Richard looked up from his desk. Do you still have something to prove? I thought for a moment. No. Then why are you hesitating? Because part of me remembers the woman I loved. Victoria smiled gently. And the other part? The other part remembers the man I became after losing her. She nodded. Then meet her. You think I should? I think unfinished conversations have a way of following people. That evening, I walked into a quiet cafe. Sophia was already there. She stood when she saw me. Thank you for coming. I took the chair across from her. You said you wanted to talk. She looked down at her hands. I owe you an apology. For a few moments, neither of us spoke. Finally, Sophia looked up. I've replayed our last conversation 1,000 times. I stayed quiet. I kept telling myself I made the right choice. And now, she allowed a slow breath. Now I know I was wrong. I listened without interrupting. I thought love could wait. Her voice trembled. I was wrong. Tears gathered in her eyes. I believed success would fix everything. It didn't. No. She looked directly at me. I thought you'd always be there. I closed my eyes for a second. I really believed that. I know. I never imagined a day would come when you stopped waiting. I didn't answer immediately. The silence between us carried years of memories. She wiped away a tear. I didn't lose you when the company collapsed. She shook her head. I lost you the day I chose my ambition over us. For the first time, her words sounded free of excuses. They sounded painfully honest. I looked at Sophia for a long moment before speaking. You asked me once to wait. She nodded slowly. I remember. I did wait. A tear rolled down her cheek. For years. Yes. She lowered her eyes. I kept believing you would call. I am sorry. I believed every birthday, every holiday, and every quiet evening might be the day you came back. She covered her mouth. Ethan. But eventually I understood something. She looked at me again. What? I couldn't spend my whole life waiting for someone who never chose me. She closed her eyes. I chose my company. You did. I thought I could come back later. I know. I never realized later doesn't always exist. I nodded. Sometimes the hardest goodbyes happen long before people say the words. She began crying quietly. I didn't interrupt her. Some tears deserved silence more than comfort. For the first time, Neither of us was arguing. We were simply facing the truth we had both avoided for years. Sophia wiped her eyes and tried to steady her voice. I don't expect you to forgive me. I looked at her calmly. This isn't about forgiveness. Then what is it about? It's about accepting what already happened. She nodded slowly. I kept telling myself I could have both success and love. You probably could have. She looked surprised. Then why didn't I? Because you stopped choosing us. Her shoulders dropped. I didn't see it that way. I know. I thought I was asking for time. But I heard goodbye. She covered her face for a moment. I was selfish. You were afraid? She looked at me again. Do you hate me? I answered without hesitation. No. Why not? Because hating you would keep me trapped in the past. She whispered, I don't deserve your kindness. This isn't kindness. What is it? It's peace. She cried harder, and I realized she wasn't mourning the company anymore. She was mourning the future we would never have together. The cafe grew quieter as the evening passed. Neither of us rushed to leave. There was nothing left to defend and nothing left to prove. Sophia looked at me one last time. If I could go back, I'd choose differently. I smiled sadly. I believe you, but believing me doesn't change anything. No. She took a slow breath. I hope someone loves you the way you love me. I hope you've learned to never ask that person to wait. She nodded through her tears. I have. We both stood. For a second, it felt like the past had returned. Then I realized it hadn't. The man standing before her was no longer waiting for another chance. And the woman facing me finally understood what her choice had truly cost. I really am sorry, Ethan. I know. She reached toward me, then quietly lowered her hand. Neither of us needed another goodbye. Our silence said everything words never could. As I walked away, I didn't hear anger behind me. I only heard quiet sobs. When I glanced back one final time, silent tears filled both our eyes, and I knew we were mourning the same lost future from opposite sides of the same memory. The morning the acquisition officially closed felt surprisingly quiet. Everyone at Hayes Capital was smiling, shaking hands, and congratulating one another. I stood near the conference room window, watching the city instead of the celebration. Victoria walked over with 2 cups of coffee. You should be celebrating, she said. I thought I would. And I feel peaceful. She handed me a cup. That's not a bad feeling. No, she smiled. You led one of the biggest acquisitions in our company's history. I couldn't have done it alone. Maybe not. She looked at me carefully. But you earned every bit of this moment. I nodded. Thank you. She raised her coffee cup. Congratulations, Ethan. I touched my cup against hers. Thank you, Victoria. The applause behind us grew louder, but I didn't turn around. For years, I thought success would feel like victory over someone else. Standing there, I realized it felt much more like finally making peace with myself. At that afternoon, Richard asked me to join him in his office. Come in, Ethan. I closed the door behind me. You wanted to see me? He smiled and pointed toward the chair across from him. Sit down. I did. He looked at me for a long moment before speaking. You handled this acquisition with integrity. I only followed the facts. You did more than that. I waited quietly. You never let personal pain control your decisions. I tried not to. Richard nodded. That's why I'm proud of you. His words meant more than he probably realized. Then he leaned forward. Do you know what the greatest victory is? I shook my head. No, it isn't buying a company. I listened carefully. It's refusing to become the person who hurt you. I lowered my eyes. I wanted revenge once. I know, but I don't anymore. Richard smiled. Good. Why? Because revenge ends stories. He paused. Growth begins new ones. I left his office carrying those words with me, knowing I would never forget them. Later that evening, I walked through the lobby as employees quietly packed away the last acquisition files. Near the exit, I saw Sophia standing alone with a single cardboard box in her hands. She noticed me. So this is it. I nodded. Yes. She looked down at the box and smiled sadly. I never imagined leaving like this. I didn't know what to say. After a moment, she spoke again. Congratulations. Thank you. You earned everything you have. I shook my head. I earned the chance to keep growing. She laughed softly through tired eyes. You're still teaching me lessons. I never wanted to. I know. She adjusted the box in her arms. I used to walk into this building believing I owned my future. And now I'm leaving with everything I still have. I looked at the small box. It isn't much. She smiled faintly. It's enough to remind me what really matters. For the first time, our conversation ended without blame, excuses, or unfinished questions. I stayed by the window long after everyone else had gone home. The city lights reflected across the glass, reminding me how different my life had become. Victoria walked over quietly, still thinking, a little, about Sophia, about everything. She smiled gently. Do you regret any of it? I considered the question. I regret the pain, but not the journey. I shook my head. No, if none of this had happened, I never would have discovered who I could become. Victoria Nadith. That's why you're stronger now. I looked out at the streets below. For years, I believed revenge would heal me. And did it? No. What healed you? I smiled for the first time that day. Growth. She placed a hand on my shoulder. That's the answer I hoped you'd find. As I left the building, I finally understood my worth had never depended on someone choosing me. It came from choosing myself. For years, I chased love. Today I walked toward peace. And for the first time in my life, that was more than enough. Several months passed before I saw Sophia again. It happened at a charity fundraising event hosted by Hayes Capital. I wasn't expecting to see anyone from my past, so when I turned and recognized her across the room, I stopped for a moment. She walked toward me slowly. She looked different, not weaker, not defeated, just quieter. Ethan, she said softly. Hello, Sophia. May we talk? I nodded. Of course. We stepped onto a quiet balcony away from the crowd. She looked at the city lights before speaking. I've been thinking about everything. So have I. She smiled sadly. I used to believe there would always be another chance. I stayed silent. I thought I had time. She lowered her eyes. I was wrong. I listened without interrupting. For the first time, there was no business between us. No arguments. No expectations. Only two people finally ready to speak honestly. Sophia took a slow breath before looking at me again. I owe you one last apology. You've already apologized. I know, but I never told you everything. I nodded. I'm listening. She clasped her hands together. For years, I convinced myself you would always be there. I remained quiet. I thought I could chase success first and come back to love later. She smiled sadly. I believed you would still be waiting. I looked at her gently. I did wait. I know, and that's what hurts the most. Tears filled her eyes. I didn't realize I was asking you to stop living while I chase my dreams. You understand now. Yes. She shook her head. I kept believing life would give me another chance. It doesn't always. She whispered, no, it doesn't. For the first time, there were no excuses left between us. Only truth, regret, and the quiet acceptance that some doors close forever. Looked at Sophia with a calm heart. You know, I said, I should probably thank you. She blinked in surprise. Thank me? Yes. For what? For leaving. She stared at me, confused. I don't understand. If I hadn't lost you, I never would have found myself. She slowly wiped away a tear. I only gave you pain. You gave me a reason to grow. I never wanted to hurt you. I believe you. She lowered her head. I wish I had understood that sooner. So do I. I smiled gently. But we can't change yesterday. No, we can only decide who we become because of it. She nodded. I think I'm finally beginning to understand. I took a slow breath. I don't hate you, Sophia. You don't. No. What do you feel? Gratitude. She looked at me through tearful eyes. That's harder to accept than anger. Maybe, but it's the truth. For the first time, I realized I meant every word I had just spoken. We stood quietly on the balcony for another moment, watching the lights below. Sophia finally broke the silence. I hope you're happy. I smiled. I am. I am glad. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. You deserve this peace. Thank you. She took one slow step back. I guess this is really goodbye. I nodded. Yes. I won't ask you to wait again. A sad smile crossed my face. I know. She covered her mouth as tears rolled down her cheeks. I'm sorry for everything. I've already forgiven you. She whispered, almost too softly to hear. Goodbye, Ethan. I held her gaze for one last moment. Goodbye, Sophia. There was no anger between us. Only acceptance. Only gratitude for the lessons we had learned through pain. When I turned toward the ballroom doors, I knew I wasn't walking away from her. I was walking toward the life I had finally chosen for myself. As I walked toward the exit, I heard Sophia's voice one last time. Ethan. I stopped but didn't turn around. Through quiet tears, she whispered, Goodbye. I closed my eyes for a brief moment. Then I smiled. Without looking back, I raised one hand in a silent farewell and continued walking. With every step, I felt lighter. Years ago, I believed success meant proving someone wrong. Today, I understood that real success meant proving myself right. It meant refusing to let another person's choices decide my value. It meant choosing peace over bitterness, growth over revenge, and hope over regret. Sophia had finally understood that the last time she asked me to wait was also the last time she truly had me. I no longer belonged to the past. I belonged to the future I had built with my own hands. I walked into the night with confidence, gratitude, and quiet strength. For the first time in my life, I didn't need anyone else's approval to know exactly who I was. That was the greatest success I could ever achieve. The end.